I was declared Baron before them all, under the cold glow of torches flickering on the hall's walls, as the elder spoke the words like a divine sentence. I remember the sound the silver goblet made when it fell from my hand, a brief clatter, almost a lament. The women at the table looked away, some with disguised pity, others with cruel relief. I, a daughter of no one and an unworthy wife, became in that instant a dead weight in the lineage of the North Ridge pack. That was the verdict that sealed my fate. Barren, impure, useless. I was led through the narrow corridors, between walls covered with tapestries that seemed to watch me. With every step, the sound of boots echoed behind me, heavy, relentless. They said the Alpha King did not tolerate weakness in his territory and that no barren female could remain under his roof. I did not see him that night, but I felt his absence like an even more suffocating presence. When I was finally put outside, the snow began to fall. Not gently, but with a silent fury. The castle lights went out one by one, and the cold embraced me like a shroud. I can still hear the voices, the muffled laughter, the whispered words. She never served her purpose. But I knew there was something more. A secret in my body that not even the elders would understand. Something that stirred in the silence under my skin like a living memory. I spent the following months in exile, sheltered in a cabin near the river. Loneliness was my food and shame my roof. The women would sometimes come to watch me from a distance, like someone spying on a dangerous animal. I didn't speak. I just listened to the wind. It brought rumors from the castle, of new alliances, of fertile females, of feasts in the king's honor. They said he had taken another mate. That, the Alpha King, the man whose voice could make the ground tremble, had never spoken my name after I was cast out. Until the night I saw him again. He appeared on the cabin's threshold like a shadow tearing through the cold. His cloak was covered in snow, his eyes dark as pitch, and he carried the silence of someone who shouldn't be there. The flame in the fireplace flickered, as if it recognized him before I did. "They lied," he said, without greeting, without pity. "About you? About what you are capable of bearing," my body trembled. Not from fear, but from something deeper, more ancient, as if the sound of his voice awakened within me what had been silenced. He approached. The air seemed to thin. The scent of iron and pine that came from him mingled with my trembling breath. And when his eyes met mine, I felt the whole world tilt, as if everything that had existed until then was merely a prologue. There were no promises, only the silence, the same silence that always precedes the inevitable. The next morning he was gone, and I alone felt the first sign, a deep warmth, a tremor in my womb, the hint of life where they said there was only emptiness. Months passed before I returned to the castle, summoned back not out of mercy but necessity. The throne was threatened, the king had no heirs, and when they saw me cross the gates wrapped in simple cloaks, my belly already rounded, the stares multiplied like blades. The women recoiled. The elders exchanged glances, and the king, the Alpha King before everyone, rose from his throne. The hall was full. The torches burned like witnesses. "No one touches her," he said, his voice deep, sharp, commanding. "What she carries belongs to me." The silence that followed was almost sacred. I felt the weight of 1,000 judgments upon me, but also the fire of something new, something that was bringing me back to life. When the first cry echoed weeks later, everyone understood. It wasn't one child, it was two. Two hearts beating as one. The heirs that fate had denied the pack were born from me, the woman they had declared barren. And as the king held them in his arms, he looked at me with a mixture of awe and surrender. I saw in his eyes the memory of the night the impossible became flesh. Today, as I write these words, the wind blows again through the cracks of the castle, carrying the echo of what no one dares say aloud, that the power of life is not always born from pure blood, but from the soul that endures. And I, the outcast woman, the exile, the one burned by shame, became the womb for the redemption of an entire kingdom. But there are still secrets buried in the shadows of these walls, and I sense that the price for bearing the Alpha King's heirs has not yet been fully paid. The stairs follow me through the cold stone corridors. I am no longer the barren one, the unworthy, but something worse. An enigma, a threat. The woman who defied the laws of nature. I feel the whispers behind the ancient tapestries, see the tremor in the servants' hands when they touch my sons' cradles. My twins, my little prodigies with eyes as dark as the moonless night, identical to their father. Liam and Damien, old names, strong as the mountains surrounding the kingdom. The king named them while I still trembled with exhaustion on the blood-soaked bed. He gave them the names of warriors, of conquerors, while the elder women washed their tiny bodies with sacred herbal waters. I now occupy chambers in the east wing of the fortress. They are not the Queen's chambers. That title was never bestowed upon me. I am merely the mother of the heirs, the guardian of the princes, a sacred vessel that has fulfilled its function. The walls here are thicker, the windows narrower. They say it's to protect the children from the biting cold that descends from the mountains. But I know a gilded cage when I see one. The king comes at night, never during the day, never where others can see the way his eyes roam over me. He enters silent as a shadow, imposing in his immense height. First, always he goes to the cradles. He watches the sleeping children, touches their foreheads with a restrained reverence he never shows in public. Then, he turns to me. There are never words of affection, never promises. Just that look, penetrating, hungry, indecipherable, that awakens something inside me as if lighting a flame in my bones. "Did you feed them today?" he asks, always the same question, as if it were a code between us. "Yes, my lord," I reply, always the same answer. Knowing he isn't just asking about the babies, but about me, about my strength, about my ability to sustain his heirs. And then he takes me in his arms, not with gentleness, never with gentleness, but with an urgency that makes me feel desired beyond my usefulness. In those moments when our skin touches and our sighs mingle with the crackling fire in the hearth, I almost believe there is something more between us, something that transcends need, duty, politics. But in the morning, he is always gone before the dawn paints the sky, and I remain alone with my sons, my precious secrets made flesh, and the growing weight of the knowledge that in this castle, in this kingdom, no one is truly what they seem. Genevieve, the woman who was destined to be the king's wife before my return, looks at me as if she could pierce me with her thoughts. She is a beauty carved from ice, tall, slender, with hair so blonde it looks almost white in the torchlight. The daughter of the oldest lineage after the royal family, she represented the perfect alliance, the pure blood that would strengthen the throne, until my rounded belly destroyed her dreams. She found me in the West Gallery yesterday as I was walking with the babies in my arms. The nursemaids had mysteriously disappeared, as often happens when Genevieve approaches. Her scent of verbena and musk arrived before she did, intense, suffocating. "How is the miraculous mother?" she asked, without smiling, without even glancing at the children. "Sleeping well in the chambers that should be mine." I clutched the twins to my chest. They remained quiet, as if they sensed the danger. Always so silent, my sons, so observant for such small creatures. "The chambers I occupy are the king's choice," I answered, trying to move past her, her arm extended, blocking my path. The sleeve of her royal blue dress brushed my face like an icy caress. "Don't fool yourself," she whispered, moving so close I felt her minty breath against my cheek. "Whatever you did to get pregnant, whatever spell you cast, it won't last forever. Do you know what happens to women like you when the novelty wears off?" I didn't answer. I didn't ask what kind of women like me were. Women of mixed blood, daughters of servants who dared to approach royalty, or women who, in some mysterious way, defied the laws of nature everyone believed they knew. "Ask Lady Rowena," Genevieve continued, a cruel smile playing on her perfect lips. "Oh, you can't. She disappeared on a winter's night, didn't she? After giving the old king a son who wasn't quite what he expected." The name hit me like a physical blow. Lady Rowena. The current king's mother. The queen no one mentioned, who didn't exist in portraits, in official histories, only in hushed whispers and fearful glances. One of the babies, Liam, always the more sensitive one, began to whimper. Genevieve took a step back, as if the sound repelled her. "Take good care of those little prodigies," she said, sarcasm poisoning every syllable. "And perhaps you should learn to swim. The lake is especially cold this time of year." When I finally managed to get back to my chambers, my legs were trembling so much they could barely hold me. I placed the twins in their cradles and fell to my knees on the thick carpet, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it wanted to escape my chest. Lady Rowena. The name echoed in my mind like a warning, like a bell tolling at a funeral. Why had I never thought of her before? The mother of the man who was now my lover, my protector, my jailer, the vanished queen. I looked at my sleeping sons, and for the first time since returning to the castle, I felt true fear. Not for myself. I had long since stopped fearing for my own life, but for them. For the small beings I had brought into this world of shadows and secrets. That night, the king did not come, nor the next. The days turned into a week, then two. I nursed my children, sang them old songs my mother, a simple servant, had taught me. I tried not to think about the meaning of his absence. On the 14th day, when the full moon hung huge and orange over the mountains, a soft knock sounded at my door. It wasn't the king's pattern. He rarely announced himself. I hesitated, the babies already asleep in their cradles. "Come in," I said finally, adjusting the robe over my body still marked by childbirth. The door opened slowly, revealing not the imposing Alpha King, but a stooped figure, wrinkled by time. Ilara, the oldest healer in the pack, the one everyone consulted in secret but whose advice they denied in public. She limped in, leaning on a gnarled staff of dark wood. Her face was a map of deep wrinkles, but her eyes, amber, almost golden, shone with a disturbing clarity. "You must come with me," she said without preamble, without curtsies. "Bring the little ones." "There is little time," I hesitated. I trusted Ilara more than anyone else in the castle. She was the one who had secretly given me herbs to ease the pain of childbirth when the official midwives refused. But to leave my chambers in the middle of the night, with the babies, "The king," I began. But she cut me off with a sharp gesture of her wrinkled hand. "The king is busy with the southern emissaries, and there is something you need to know before it's too late." Her eyes moved to the cradles. "Something about what they truly are." Those words sealed my decision. Quickly, I wrapped each baby in thick blankets and held them to my chest. Ilara led me through corridors I had never seen before, narrow passages hidden behind tapestries, worn staircases that spiraled down into the fortress's bowels. The air grew colder, denser with each step. The babies miraculously remained completely silent, as if they understood the need for secrecy. Finally, we reached a small circular chamber lit only by 3 black candles. In the center was a low stone table covered with a faded red cloth. The scent of dried herbs and sandalwood incense filled the air. "Place them here," Ilara ordered, indicating 2 small cushions on the table. I obeyed, though every fibre of my being protested the separation, however small. Liam and Damien, side by side, stared at the stone ceiling with their dark, inscrutable eyes. Ilara moved around the table, murmuring words in an ancient language I barely recognized. From a worn leather pouch, she took out a small vial containing a silvery liquid, shimmering like mercury in the flickering candlelight. "What is that?" I asked, alarmed. "What are you going to do to my sons?" "Nothing that will harm them," she replied, her gaze fixed on the babies. "Only reveal what is already there, hidden beneath the skin." With fingers surprisingly steady for someone so old, she uncorked the vial and let a single drop of the silvery liquid fall onto each baby's forehead. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the skin where the liquid had touched began to glow. Not as a reflection of the candlelight, but with its own light. An ethereal, bluish glow that spread like luminous veins under their delicate skin. The twins' eyes, once dark as night, lit up with the same blue light for a brief instant. I took a step back, my heart racing. "What does this mean?" Ilara sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping as if a great weight pressed upon them. "It means, my dear, that you carried in your womb what no woman in the history of the pack has ever carried. Not even Lady Rowena, who gave birth to the current king." She paused, her golden eyes fixed on mine. "Your sons are not just wolves like the rest of us. They carry the blood of the ancients, the blood of those who walked between two worlds. I looked at my babies, who now seemed normal again, the glow fading quickly. What two worlds? The world of men and the world of gods. The statement hung in the air like smoke, dense, suffocating. Elara continued, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. The Alpha King knows this. He sensed it from the moment he saw them born. That is why he protects them with such fervor. And that is why others want to see them destroyed. My head was spinning. Thoughts and questions tumbled over each other in my mind. How? How is that possible? I'm nobody. A sad smile appeared on the old healer's chapped lips. You are much more than you think you are, child. Your mother was not a simple servant, as they told you. Those words hit me like a physical blow. Images of my poor childhood, of my mother's calloused hands washing clothes in the river, of her face always lowered before the nobles, flashed through my mind like lightning. What are you saying? I am saying that you, like your sons, carry the blood of the ancients, diluted by generations of marriages to common humans, but still there, dormant, until the night the Alpha King came to your cabin. I shook my head, disbelieving. No, that can't be true. I would have known. I would have felt something. And you didn't? Elara challenged, moving closer to me. Did you never wonder why you could hear the whispers of the wind when others only heard noise? Why you could feel the pain of injured animals before you even saw them? Why, even declared Barren, your body responded to the king's touch as no other woman's has? She reached out her wrinkled hand and touched my chest, right over my heart. The blood of the ancients recognized its own, and now your sons carry the strength of both lineages. I looked at the babies, so small, so vulnerable, and a new understanding hit me. Lady Rowena, was she also? Elara shook her head. No, Lady Rowena was human, completely human. She gave the old king a strong son, a wolf son, but not a divine son. And when the Council of Elders found out, her voice faltered. What happened to her? I pressed, though I feared the answer. Elara's eyes darkened. She was sacrificed in the name of the purity of the bloodline. The lake, my dear. The lake that Genevieve mentioned. That is where she met her end under the ice of a winter as harsh as this one. A chill ran down my spine. And the king? Does he know this? The king was just a boy when it happened. They told him his mother had run away, abandoned the throne and him. The truth was kept secret for decades, but there are rumors. Rumors that he has finally discovered what really happened. Elara gathered the babies, returning them to my trembling arms. That is why he came to you on that snowy night. Not just for desire, not just for the need of heirs, but because something in him, something primordial and instinctive, recognized in you the chance for revenge against those who murdered his mother. Who? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Who killed her? The council. The same elders who now look at your sons with fear and suspicion. The same ones who proclaimed you barren, who exiled you, who now plan to do to you and your sons what they did to Lady Rowena. I clutched my babies to my chest, feeling their tiny hearts beat against mine. But if the king knows, if he suspects. The king is powerful, yes, but even he must play the game of politics. Move his pieces carefully. Elara held my face between her rough hands. He cannot simply destroy the council without proof, without justification. He needs to wait for the right moment, the perfect opportunity. And in the meantime, my sons are in danger, I concluded, the terrible reality finally settling on me like a cold stone. Elara nodded gravely. Yes, and so are you. At that moment, a subtle noise alerted us. Footsteps in the corridor above, the distant clink of armor. Elara's eyes widened. We must go back. Now. They cannot know we were here. She quickly snuffed out the candles, plunging the chamber into darkness. Follow me. I know another way. We traversed even narrower corridors, so low I had to stoop to pass. The air was thick with dust and dampness. The babies, as if sensing the danger, remained completely silent. When we finally returned to my chambers, dawn was beginning to tint the sky a pale pink. Elara stopped at the door, her golden eyes shining with urgency. Listen carefully, she whispered. There is a ceremony approaching, the Blood Moon Festival. It is when the new heirs are formally presented to the entire pack. I nodded. I had heard rumors of this ancient ceremony, During the ritual, Ilara continued, your sons will be tested. A drop of blood from each will be spilled on the stone of truth. If the blood glows with the bluish light you saw today. The council will know, I finished, fear tightening my throat. Yes, and they will not hesitate to act. Her fingers gripped my wrist with surprising strength. You must be prepared, for whatever happens, to flee if necessary. Flee, but where? The pack controls all the lands to the southern border. An enigmatic smile touched Ilara's lips. There are places not even the wolves know. Places protected by the ancients. She pressed a small object into my hand. When the time comes, if it comes, hold this and think of the mountains beyond the lake, of the valley hidden by the eternal mists. I looked at my hand. It was a small stone, seemingly ordinary, dark grey with white veins. But as I touched it, I felt a strange warmth emanating from it, as if it responded to my touch. And the king? I asked, a sharp pain tightening my chest at the thought of leaving him. Ilara's eyes softened. The king has his own path to follow, his own destiny to fulfill. Perhaps that destiny will cross with yours again. Or perhaps not. With those words, she was gone as silently as she had arrived, leaving me alone with my sons and the crushing weight of the newfound truth. In the days that followed, I watched the castle with new eyes. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every whisper a plot. I cared for my sons with redoubled vigilance, refusing to leave them with the nursemaids for more than a few minutes. The Blood Moon Festival was approaching. I could feel the tension building in the castle, the preparations intensifying. Red carpets being rolled out in the corridors, ancient tapestries being dusted and hung, servants rushing about with armfuls of black and red candles. And amidst all this frantic activity, the Alpha King finally returned to my chambers. He entered without knocking, as he always did. But there was something different in his posture, in his eyes. A tension I had never seen before, a watchfulness that made me shiver. Are they well? He asked, moving directly to the cradles, as if he feared the babies might have disappeared in his absence. They are, I replied, watching him cautiously. Growing stronger every day. He touched the head of each twin with a silent reverence. Then he turned to me, his dark eyes piercing mine, as if they could read my thoughts. You spoke with Ilara? It wasn't a question. I felt the blood run cold in my veins, but I kept my face impassive. Yes, and she told you about your mother, about what you truly are. Again, not a question. I simply nodded, unable to trust my own voice. He took a step toward me, then another. When he was close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, he raised his hand and touched my face. A touch surprisingly gentle for a man of such raw strength. I knew the moment I first saw you. There was something about you. Something that didn't belong to this mundane world. His fingers traced the line of my jaw. Something that awoke memories in me I didn't even know I had. Memories of what? I managed to ask, my voice little more than a whisper. Of a life before this one. Of a time when our people could still walk between the realms before the doors were closed. His gaze moved to the cradles. Our sons are proof that those doors can be reopened. I took a step back, suddenly alarmed. Is that what you want? To reopen portals to where? For what? A dark smile touched his lips. To reclaim what is ours by right. The power that was stolen from us centuries ago, when humans forced us to hide our true nature. I looked at my sleeping sons, so small, so innocent. They are just babies. They are not. Tools for your revenge. Something dangerous flashed in the king's eyes. It is not revenge. It is restoration. It is justice. Is it justice to put our sons in danger? I challenged, courage born from the maternal love boiling in my chest. The council will try to kill them when they discover the truth, just as they killed your mother. The words hit him like a physical blow. He recoiled, his face suddenly pale. What did you say? Your mother. Lady Rowena. They drowned her in the lake. They told you she ran away, but the truth is they murdered her, and they will do the same to us. For a moment, the silence in the chamber was so complete, I could hear the distant crackle of torches in the hall. The king's face was a frozen mask, his eyes fixed on some point beyond me, beyond that room. Then, slowly, a transformation began. Not the physical transformation I had witnessed a few times when the beast within him took shape. but something deeper, more frightening. A darkness that seemed to emanate from within him, engulfing him like a second skin. "How do you know this?" he asked, his voice now a low, dangerous growl. "Ilara told me," I answered, not backing down. She was there. She saw. The king closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they held a cold resolve that made me shudder. "The Blood Moon Festival will take place in 3 days," he said, each word measured, restrained. "The council will be there. All the elders, all the noble families, all those who conspired against my mother, against me, against our sons." He moved closer again, this time gripping my shoulders tightly. "You will be prepared. No matter what happens, no matter what you see or hear, you will keep our sons safe. Do you understand?" The intensity in his voice alarmed me. "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done a long time ago." His hand moved to my neck, then to my face, in an almost tender gesture that contrasted with the cold fury in his eyes. "Do you trust me?" The question caught me by surprise. Trust, such a simple, complex word. Trust the man who had exiled me when I was declared barren? The man who had come to me in the snow without explanations, without promises? The man who now spoke of portals and revenge, with my sons at the center of it all? I looked at the cradles, at the small sleeping forms, and I knew, with a painful clarity, that my answer didn't matter. That fate was already in motion, relentless as the tide. "I have no choice," I finally answered, the simple, brutal truth. A sad smile touched his lips. "None of us do. Not anymore." He leaned in, and for the first time since we had met, he kissed my forehead. An almost tender, almost fatherly gesture. Then, without another word, he turned and left. I stood in the same spot for a long time after the door closed. The small stone Ilara had given me seemed to burn in my pocket, reminding me that, perhaps, I did have a choice after all. But could I bring myself to abandon this man, this kingdom, this life, taking with me the heirs that meant so much to him? The answer did not come, only the silence and the growing certainty that the Blood Moon Festival would change everything. Forever. The 3 days leading up to the festival passed like a fever dream. The castle overflowed with activity, nobles arriving from distant lands, servants rushing to meet the growing demands, double guards at every entrance and corridor. The air vibrated with anticipation, with an almost palpable sense of a historic moment approaching. I rarely left my chambers. When I did, it was with the twins held firmly in my arms, never entrusting them to anyone. I noticed how the stares now followed me openly, not just with contempt or curiosity as before, but with a poorly disguised fear. Whispers ceased when I passed, conversations cut off mid-sentence. They knew, or at least they suspected, about me, about my sons, about what would happen on the night of the festival. On the morning of the great day, a procession of servants entered my chambers, carrying what seemed to be pounds of scarlet and silver fabric, the ceremonial dress for the presentation of the heirs, as they fitted it to my body, still marked by the recent birth. I saw in the women's eyes the same frightened look, the same reverent fear. One of them, the youngest, let out a shaky breath when her hand accidentally touched my exposed wrist. "Forgive me, my lady," she murmured, snatching her hand back as if she'd been burned. "What is it?" I asked, curious despite the fear that constantly inhabited my chest in those days. She hesitated, looking nervously at the other women who pretended not to hear as they continued their work. "It's just, they say your touch can heal, or curse, depending on your will." I blinked, genuinely surprised. "Who says that?" "Everyone, my lady, since your sons were born with the mark." "What mark?" I pressed, my heart quickening. She lowered her voice even more. "The mark of the twin moons, my lady, on their backs, identical on both. A sign of the ancients, the old ones say." I froze. I had noticed, yes, a small birthmark on the back of each twin, just below the right shoulder, a mark that vaguely resembled 2 intertwined crescent moons. But I never thought it was anything more than a common birthmark. "Who saw this mark?" I asked, my voice firmer than I felt. "The midwives, my lady, and—" She hesitated again, biting her lip. "And Lady Genevieve. She insisted on seeing the babies when they were first bathed. Said it was her right as future queen." A chill ran down my spine. Genevieve. Of course, she would know the meaning of such a mark. And if she knew, then the council knew too. The dress was finally ready. Heavy, elaborate, with layers of fabric that whispered when I moved. The long sleeves ended in sharp points that nearly touched the floor. The scarlet colour so intense it almost looked black in certain lights, contrasted dramatically with my pale skin. "It is tradition," explained the eldest of the servants, adjusting the jewel-encrusted bodice that looked like solidified blood. "The mother of the heirs must look like the sacrifice itself." Her words, likely unintentional, sent another shiver of apprehension through my body. Sacrifice. Was that what I was to them? An offering on an altar far more ancient and sinister than I could imagine. When the servants finally left, I was alone with my sons. I dressed them in the ceremonial clothes that had been left, small tunics of a white as pure as snow, embroidered with silver threads that formed ancient symbols I didn't recognize. As I did, I carefully examined the back of each one. And there they were, 2 small identical marks the size of a coin, 2 intertwined crescent moons. I touched them gently, and for an instant, just an instant, they seemed to glow under my fingers with that same bluish light Alara had. Revealed in her secret chamber, the sun was beginning to set when they came for me. Not servants this time, but guards, 6 of them, huge and silent, wearing ceremonial black armor polished to a high sheen. "It is time, my lady," said the leader, his voice devoid of any emotion. I gathered my sons, 1 in each arm, and followed the guards through the castle's corridors. Each step resonated with a sense of finality, of an inevitable destiny unfolding. The great hall was almost unrecognizable. The normally austere walls had disappeared under enormous blood-red tapestries depicting scenes of the hunt, of battle, of transformation. Hundreds of torches burned in wrought-iron sconces, their flames dancing like restless spirits. In the center of the hall, a circle of stone had been erected, ancient stones, covered in carved symbols that seemed to move in the flickering light. And in the center of that circle, a single stone stood, the stone of truth, black as the deepest night, polished until it shone like an obsidian mirror. The hall was packed. Hundreds of eyes followed me as I walked down the central aisle. I saw familiar and unfamiliar faces. Nobles of the Northridge pack, visitors from distant lands, servants positioned at the edges, watching with wide eyes the spectacle that was about to begin. On the opposite side of the hall, on a raised throne, sat the Alpha King. He wore his full battle armor, not the polished ceremonial version, but the real thing, scarred by actual combat, with deep gouges and scratches that told stories of past conflicts. A black fur cloak fell from his broad shoulders, and his head was bare, his dark hair falling in wild waves to his shoulders. At his side, not sitting but standing like a sentinel, was Genevieve. Her dress, the same intense scarlet as mine, contrasted dramatically with her pallor and fair hair. Her eyes met mine, and in them there was no triumph, no arrogance, only a cold, calculated resolve. To the right of the throne, seated on low benches of dark wood, was the Council of Elders. 12 old men and women dressed in grey fur robes, their faces so wrinkled and weathered they looked like leather masks stretched over skulls. When I reached the stone circle, I stopped. The silence in the hall was absolute, heavy, thick with expectation. One of the elders, the oldest, whose name was Thorn, rose and entered the circle with me. His body was bent with age, but his eyes were sharp, alert, scrutinizing every detail of the babies in my arms. "Present the children for judgment," he ordered, his voice surprisingly strong for one so visibly frail. I hesitated. I felt the weight of the small stone Alara had given me, hidden in a secret fold of my dress. For a mad moment, I considered grabbing it and running away from this place. This ritual, this trap I could feel closing around me. But then, my eyes met the king's, and in them I saw something I had never seen before. Not the usual arrogance, not the distant coldness, but a silent plea, a promise. Slowly, reluctantly, I held my sons out toward the elder. He did not touch them, only gestured toward the stone of truth. "Place them there," he commanded. With my heart pounding like a trapped bird, I approached the black stone and reluctantly positioned my babies on its cold, polished surface. They remained incredibly quiet, looking up with those dark, unfathomable eyes. Elder Thorn approached, raising a small ceremonial silver dagger. Its hilt was adorned with red stones that glittered like eyes in the wavering light. With a precise movement, he made a tiny cut on each baby's finger. There was no cry, no sound but the collective held breath of the crowd. A drop of blood from each twin fell onto the black stone. For a moment, a glorious, hopeful moment, nothing happened. The blood simply lay there, red against black, ordinary, normal. Then it began. A subtle glow at first, almost imperceptible. Then, growing in intensity, the drops of blood began to emit that ethereal bluish light I had seen before. But this time, the light did not remain contained. It spread, tracing the symbols carved into the stone, illuminating them one by one, until the entire surface shone with a complex pattern of silver-blue light. A collective gasp swept through the hall. I heard muffled exclamations, saw people kneeling, others recoiling in terror. Elder Thorn staggered back as if struck by a physical blow. "The ancient blooded," he murmured, his voice trembling. "The children of the prophecy." My eyes frantically sought the king. He was on his feet now, his face an impenetrable mask. But something in his posture had changed. A tension, a readiness, like a predator about to strike. Genevieve stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the glowing babies. "Behold," she cried, her clear, cold voice cutting through the charged air. "They are not wolves. They are not our kind. They are abominations." The hall exploded into voices. Accusations, cries of fear, shouts of outrage. I saw guards moving, hands on swords, faces taut with anticipation. Elder Thorn raised a hand, calling for silence. When the tumult finally subsided, he turned to me, his face now a mask of restrained fury. "You have brought tainted blood into our lineage," he accused, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Just as Lady Rowena did before you." At the sound of the name, a deathly silence fell over the hall. I saw pale faces, exchanged glances, trembling hands. It was a name that was not meant to be spoken, a secret that was not to be revealed. "Yes," the elder continued, his voice low, dangerous. "I thought we had eliminated the threat when we disposed of her. But now I see the poison lingered, hidden in your blood." He pointed at me again. "In your foul, mixed blood." It was then that the king finally spoke. His voice, when it came, was not the roar I expected. It was something lower, more dangerous, a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the vast hall. "What did you do to my mother?" Elder Thorn froze. His eyes, once burning with fury, now showed the first flicker of fear. "My lord, your mother fled. She abandoned your father, abandoned you." Lies. The word cut through the air like a blade. The king descended the throne steps slowly, each step deliberate, measured. She was murdered. Drowned in the lake. On whose orders? The silence in the hall was so absolute I could hear the crackle of the torches, the distant clink of armor as guards shifted nervously. Thorn looked around as if seeking support. The other elders remained motionless, their faces like stone masks. "It was for the safety of the pack," he said finally, his voice failing. She was tainted. Her blood was not pure. The king continued to advance, each step a harbinger of contained violence. "And who determined that? Who sat in judgment over the Queen of the North?" Thorn straightened his shoulders, a last flicker of dignity on his aged face. "The council, all of us." It was unanimous. "All of you," the king repeated, his gaze sweeping over the faces of the elders. "All of you who now look upon my sons with the same fear, the same prejudice." He stopped a few feet from the stone circle, his eyes meeting mine for a brief, intense moment. Then he turned to the assembled crowd. "I invited you all here today not just to witness the presentation of my heirs, but to witness the end of an era, the end of a reign of lies, of murder disguised as tradition." With a smooth motion, he drew his sword, an ancient weapon, its blade darkened by time and use, not a ceremonial sword, but a real instrument of death. Genevieve stepped forward, her face pale with alarm. "My lord, think carefully. They are the elders, the guardians of our law." "Guardians!" The king laughed, a humorless sound. "Or murderers? Butchers who kill in the name of purity?" He turned to me again, and this time there was a clear command in his eyes. Take the babies. Get back. I moved quickly, scooping my sons off the still glowing stone, retreating to the edge of the circle. The heavy dress hindered my movements, but fear gave me strength I didn't know I possessed. The real taint, the king continued, his voice now projecting to fill the entire hall, is not in the blood of the ancients. It is in the corruption, the cruelty, the fear that you have cultivated for generations. It was then that Genevieve made her move. With a speed I hadn't expected, she drew a small dagger from her sleeve and lunged toward me, her eyes fixed not on me, but on the babies in my arms. The abominations must die, she shrieked. What happened next occurred so quickly that later, trying to recall it, the images blurred in my mind like a fever dream. The king moved like a lightning strike, intercepting Genevieve before she could reach me. But another movement came from the opposite side, one of the guards surging forward with his sword drawn. I stumbled back, tripping on the folds of the heavy dress, shielding the babies with my body. The guard raised his sword, his eyes cold, determined. And then, blood. Not mine, not my son's, but the guard's, whose throat suddenly opened in a gruesome red smile. Behind him stood Ilara, the old healer, holding what looked like a small ritual sickle, its thin blade now dripping red. "Run, child," she commanded, her voice strangely calm amidst the chaos now unfolding in the hall. For chaos it was. The king had struck down Genevieve but was now facing other advancing guards. The elders were shouting orders. People were running in every direction, panic spreading like wildfire. Ilara grabbed my arm, pulling me away from the stone circle, toward a small side door I had never noticed before. "The tunnels," she said, urgently. "Go now." I hesitated, looking over my shoulder. The king was surrounded now, fighting with a ferocity that was both human and bestial, his sword a deadly arc in the air. Our eyes met for one brief final moment. I saw no fear in his gaze, no regret, only an iron certainty. And maybe, just maybe, something else. Something that in another life, in another world, might have been called love. "Go," Ilara shouted, shoving me through the door, and I went. With my sons held tightly against my chest, I plunged into the darkness of the ancient tunnels beneath the castle, the sound of battle fading behind me. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs trembled with exhaustion. The tunnels were a labyrinth, but somehow, as if guided by an instinct older than myself, I always chose the right path. I always knew which turn to take, which passage to follow. Finally, I emerged into the light of the full moon, in a small opening at the base of the mountain that rose behind the castle. The cold night air hit my face like a slap, bringing me back to cruel reality. I looked back. The castle was burning. Orange and red flames licked at the ancient towers, and even at this distance I could hear faint screams. My sons began to cry then for the first time since it all began. Not the ordinary cry of babies, but something older, deeper, like the lament of an entire species. I held them tighter, murmuring wordless promises, assurances I wasn't sure I could keep. And as I did, I felt the small stone Ilara had given me, still hidden in the folds of my dress. I took it out, holding it in my palm. In the moonlight, it no longer looked ordinary. It shone with that same bluish light that marked my sons, that ran in my veins, that linked our blood to the ancients. I closed my hand over it, and, as Ilara had instructed, I thought of the valley hidden by the eternal mists, of the mountains beyond the lake. The sensation was immediate, a pull at the center of my being, as if something grabbed me from the inside and yanked me forward. The landscape around me began to distort, to dissolve, the trees and rocks becoming blurs of color and shadow. And then, we were somewhere else. A narrow valley between snow-capped peaks, shrouded in a mist that seemed to glow with its own internal light. The air here was different, thicker, more alive, filled with fragrances I had never smelled before. My sons stopped crying instantly. Their small faces turned upward toward the strange, diffuse light that permeated the mist. Ahead of me, a narrow path snaked between ancient trees larger than any I had ever seen. And in the distance, almost hidden by the mist, the silhouette of— what? A tower? A temple? I adjusted the weight of my sons in my arms and took the first step onto the path. I didn't know what awaited me. I didn't know if the Alpha King had survived the battle, if we would ever meet again. I didn't know if the elders, with their hatred for the blood of the ancients, would come looking for us. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would protect my sons. I would teach them about their blood, their power, their potential. I would prepare them not for revenge, but for something greater, for the healing of a broken world, for the reconnection of the realms that had been separated for so long. And maybe, just maybe when the time was right, we would return. Not as fugitives, not as victims, but as bearers of a new truth, of a new age. The path before me stretched on, disappearing into the luminous mist. I straightened my shoulders, clutched my sons once more to my chest, and walked forward. Into the unknown, into destiny, into the future.